So here's something, probably another can of worms, as we say, is capital gains tax,
Yeah.
which seems, it feels quite excessive for people coming to live in France.
Yeah.
And in fact, in general, inheritance being a whole other minefield. But let's talk a bit about capital gains charges for French residents who have come from other countries, who may have property in another country, or may have property here.
Yeah.
How does that tax work?
So before anything, I just would like to emphasize on the fact that we are the 10th company accredited in France by Bercy, the French Ministry of Finance, since September 2024. So this was a huge achievement, which means that we are one of the 10 only company able to calculate and take the liability on non-resident capital gain tax calculation. We do work with the notaries, and this is mandatory for non-EU sellers. So let's say you are American or British or Swiss. You're selling your French property. You have to appoint someone like us to calculate the capital gain tax and take the liability. Why is that? It's because the French tax office doesn't want to try to get your money in Texas because it's very complicated. You live in Houston. How can they get your money? It's much easier to get me because I'm in Marseille. They know where I am. It's very easy, and they have a huge financial guarantee, and they can be paid within 15 days.
So that all makes sense.
Absolutely.
That does make sense.
Pretty much every tax rule, it has a sense. Even though it's not because people can't understand it quickly that there is not a sense.
Which is why it's great to have an explanation.
Absolutely.
Actually.
And then you get it,
think,
okay,
fair enough.
this is why I have to appoint this guy, because then the guy is taking the liability, and the tax office, it's much easier for the French tax office. Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's not the question. So we've got the French capital gains tax is made of two taxes, income tax and social charges. Okay? Income tax is 19% for everyone. Social charges are 17.2 for the French or the non-EU tax residents. And
The same amount for both.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's 7.5 for EU or Swiss or British tax residents. So it means that if you are Swiss, British or EU tax resident selling a French property, you can benefit from a reduced rate of social charges of 7.5 instead of 17.2, which is quite nice.
That's a huge difference. Why is
Absolutely.
Britain still included?
Because it's part of the Brexit deal. Yeah, we've had 2 or 3 months after Brexit, during which we didn't know what to do, and in the end there was a specific agreement about that point. Okay, so it's quite great.
Yeah.
To benefit from this, you would just have to provide your tax rep or your notary a proof that you're registered to your own country social security system. For example, in the UK, you have to ask HMRC a certificate of tax residency and your NI number.
So what if you are a British citizen living permanently in France selling your French property? What changes
In this
then?
case, no, it doesn't apply to you because you're a French tax resident. You're probably registered to the French Social Security. In this case, you'd pay just like me, just like any other French. We have taper relief for duration of ownership. So from 5 years of ownership, you can have reduced capital gains tax. Okay, the income tax part becomes 0 after 22 years.
Yeah.
And the social charges part becomes 0 after 30 years of ownership.
And when you talk about those years, does that also apply? I imagine maison principale, your principal residence, that makes sense. What about people who have secondary residences?
You have a full exemption on your main home at the moment in France. I don't know if you heard about all the latest loi de finances for 2025.
What's happening in Spain, do you mean?
No, in France.
Oh, in France?
With the motion de censure, blah blah blah.
No.
We had to have a loi de finances for 2025, which should make this full exemption on the main home for 5 years of ownership as well. But as of now, there is no real duration. Pretty much 6 months, but quite easy. From 6 months ownership, you don't pay capital gains tax on your main home, whether you're French, British, American, Australian, as long as you're French tax resident.
So that's a massive advantage to being a tax resident, a French tax resident.
Yeah, but you have to provide the French tax return, pay your taxes in France, probably pay the PUMA if you are registered. I mean, you know, those pros and cons, okay?
Yeah.
But one of the common mistakes we can see with our clients, this is quite often actually, I'm very surprised all the time. We've got people living in France for 1, 2, 5, 10 years, okay? So they live in France. They are French tax resident to me. They don't submit a French tax return. Happened to me last week. Very nice lady, Susan. She's selling her main home because she doesn't have anything else in the UK. And the agent called me and, you know, he was asking me about capital gains tax, blah, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, but Andy, this lady lives in France for a long time, so she's not paying taxes. Oh, I'm not sure she is submitting tax return. Ready. So I had her on her phone. She was very talkative, so I know everything about her. But in the end, she didn't believe she had to provide the tax return in France because she only received British pension and British rental income. So in the end, she's going to pay the full French capital gains tax on her main home. Because now it's too late to prove that she's a French tax resident.
Yes.
So, and this is a very common mistake. A lot of people do not believe they have to provide the tax return in France because they don't have a French source of income. But once they figure this out, it's too late because we are selling the house. There is a compromis de vente which is signed.
Yeah.
It's too late.
Can't get out of it.
Yeah, exactly. And the difference was massive. In her case, it was quite, 250 house, 1,000 house. I think she's going to pay something like 18,000 euros. So not nice when you should not pay it.
No. So that's one argument in favour of putting in a French tax return, though.
Well, I would not say that, Lizzie. It's mandatory, So it's not even a choice or an option.
Yeah, not a choice. No, you're right.
You have to do it.
Yeah.
But it's one of the consequences, I would say.
Yes.
It's not
of making mistakes.
Yes, exactly. So you live in France, you have to submit the tax return. You receive a French source of income, you have to submit the tax return.
Yeah.
As simple as that.
Yeah. So if you had a word of advice for people watching this video, whether it's their first tax return or subsequent tax returns, what would you say to them?
Don't wait. Don't wait May. Don't wait. Don't be stressed. It's not that complicated to people that know how to manage it.
Yeah.
So I believe that everyone's got a job and you have to trust professional. For example, I love cars, but I don't know nothing about mechanics. And even though doing a vidange is very easy, I know that, I still pay someone. Even though it looks expensive because some of my friends say, oh, Geraud, you could do it. Yes, but it's not my job. I don't know how to do it. I would better pay 500 euros to someone doing it properly. I know my cars is well handled, it's clean, So I'm a tax advisor, I'm doing taxes. I'm not a mechanic, I'm not an electrician, I'm not anything else. So trust a professional. And if you don't, to be fair, do not ask your friends because most probably, even the French are bad with taxes because we have French clients as well.
Yeah.
The French, they are not good with taxes. Of course, when you're French with one single source of income, which is a salary, yes, everyone can do a tax return. It's like click, 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 done. Okay. But you're not a tax expert, trust me. The problem is, people watching this video are not French. So they have worldwide sources of income.
Yep.
This is the problem. This is making things much more complicated. So please do ask someone that knows. And if you do ask a friend, make sure the friend knows about it. Because if you ask someone, a professional, check the records. It's not because you're an American living in France for 5 years that you are a tax expert. Absolutely not. Okay? Being French or living in France does not make you an expert. Absolutely not. Maybe you know what a baguette is or you know good restaurants, but you don't know anything about taxes.
That is definitely true for me. I would not claim to know anything about taxes. I know a little bit more, though, having spoken to you, Geraud. Definitely not enough to do my own, nor would I ever attempt it. But I might just be calling well ahead of May so as not to get into trouble. So I'll get more of the time and more of the advice. But thank you very, very much
You're
for
welcome.
talking to us.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming, Lizzie.